I know what it's like to be used by your own government. To be seen as nothing more than a weapon. To be sent places I had no right to be. To fight for something I did not believe in. All in the name of democracy? The biggest lie of all. What was it all for? I feel like I left a part of myself over there. The part that cares about anything. Now, I feel nothing. What was my purpose now? An old army buddy got in touch. Said he had found meaning in life again. Something about a community he had discovered. They were having an online meeting that weekend. What did I have to lose? It's not like I was doing anything else. They called themselves Kryptorians. They spoke about how the world was broken. Climate change, economic collapse, wars, all of these products of a corrupt system run by governments and corporations. They said that blockchains had the power to change everything, to create a system of true democracy owned by everyone, to build trust through transparency. It wasn't long before I met them in person, and they weren't the only ones. They had followers across the country, all of whom had lost faith in the system. They all believed blockchains were the key, and the more I heard, the more I did too. They had organized a rally downtown. 10,000 Kryptorians marching for a better future. Sure, they were angry. They had a right to be. But in a single moment, everything changed. A flare, mistaken for a gun by a nervous cop, changed our lives forever. A single flare had set the country alight. All of the built-up resentment boiled over, not just for our cause, but for all those who had been forgotten. Clashes with police became common as people expressed their anger. Our government, the Fed, cracked down mercilessly. SEC Marines were deployed to the streets with orders to shoot if engaged. General Tax was placed in command of ground forces. His mission was to restore order. In other words, put people back in their cages. When I was in the war, we lost because we never knew where our enemy was. We didn't even know who was an enemy. They didn't exactly wear uniforms. The Kryptorians started using the exact same playbook. Guerrilla-style warfare, baby. We gave as good as we got, sometimes more. Our ranks continued to grow, fueled by the viciousness of the Fed's tactics. But as the months went on, we knew that we could never beat the Fed. They were simply too powerful. We needed a breakthrough. The Kryptorians had attracted people from all walks of life, including talented scientists and computer engineers. It was these people who carried out cyber warfare against the Fed. If it was connected to the internet, we could hack it. And that's exactly how we found out about the facility. We had heard rumors of a secret government facility from captured SEC Marines. We knew that the Fed had been researching an ancient ring-shaped artifact. Their scientists believed it was a gateway capable of opening stable wormholes between 2 points in space. They called it the proxy portal. It was a big gamble to attack such a heavily guarded facility, but it was our only ticket off this rock. I volunteered to go in with a small recon team to take out the facility's defense grid. Once their automated air defenses were down, ERC Team 20 could then storm the complex and secure the portal. We inserted under the cover of darkness and were able to take down the grid. But as we moved for extraction, we met strong resistance. Most of my team were hit, but I managed to make it out, with guards hot on my heels. ERC Team 20 were our crack strike team. These soldiers were all ex-Special Forces. Some had even defected from the Fed. That didn't matter. We were all Kryptorians now. They had one purpose: to capture the portal facility at all costs. If they failed, then our dream of a world free from the tyranny of the Fed would be over, and likely my life too. In the end, ERC Team 20 managed to take out the remaining guards and secure the complex. I had to admit that for a second there, I thought my time was up, but life seemed to have other plans for me. We put out the call to all Kryptorians to come to the facility. We knew that the Fed would be launching a counterattack, but for now, the door to our new home was open. We just had to step through it.
10,000 Kryptorians had made it to the facility since it was captured. We would be the first citizens of the new world, the Alpha citizens. The Fed had been kind enough to stock warehouses in the portal facility with everything we needed. We guessed they had been planning their own colonization mission before we captured the facility. Raw materials, food, machinery, electronics, medicines, vehicles, weapons, you name it, we had it. Man had theorized about the existence of wormholes for decades. Now I was going to be the first woman to use one to traverse across the great vastness of space. Our probes had confirmed a breathable atmosphere, but that was our only telemetry. None of us had any idea what to expect on the other side. It was a leap of faith into the unknown. I felt the strangest sensations, like every piece of me was being broken down and reshuffled. I had this feeling I was everywhere and nowhere all at the same time. I remember wondering if I was dead and thinking it would be awfully inconvenient if I had been. After all, we had been through so much to get here. Then the light came rushing back, and with it, reality. Opening my eyes for the first time in the new world felt like I was being born again. Born into a world free from the clutches of the Fed. Not all had been so lucky. We were still waiting for ERC Team 20 when the portal shut off. Their orders were to destroy the portal so the rapidly advancing Fed forces could not follow us. Their lives had bought the time we needed to escape. I prayed we would not waste the beginning that their sacrifice had given us. We had lost the war, but won our freedom. Standing alone on the threshold of a new world, it was time to reflect. We could finally build a society founded on true democracy. I'd been imagining we'd be living in a sea of tents, like a festival, but to my surprise, the engineers had already erected Fed-made biodomes. Modular and designed to be completely self-sufficient, they were no hotel, but served our needs perfectly. With 10,000 Kryptorians now safely through the portal, we knew we couldn't stay at base camp forever. Scouting parties were sent out to explore the vast landscape and secure what precious resources they could find. We had no idea what this new world of ours held in store for us, good or bad, but the Kryptorian ranks were filled with the brightest and the best from all walks of life. Our first scouts returned from the towering mountains that stood beyond the proxy portal. They had discovered an ore of remarkable properties. Lighter than aluminum, but stronger than steel, rich veins of it ran deep into the planet's crust. We named it Crypto Ore. Amongst the troves of equipment we had borrowed from the Fed, we found incredible new technologies. The portal facility had clearly been the central R&D lab for cutting-edge Fed tech. Our engineers had assembled something the Fed called a materializer. All it required was a suitable raw material, and it could print any component we needed to almost any size. Whether by luck or design, Crypto Ore was just the ingredient it needed. Our sacred Web3 principles had brought us together in the old world, and so these principles were our guiding light in the new. We began to shape our new society into the decentralized democracy we had always dreamed about. New laws, new systems, all built on trust, transparency, and shared ownership. Our new society was advancing rapidly, and it was clear we couldn't remain nomads. We needed a permanent home. Scouts had returned with word of a majestic area to the east of the portal. The land was protected by ocean, surrounded by ore-rich mountains and neighboring fertile grasslands. It was exactly what we had been looking for. One of the Fed's finest creations was their network of autonomous construction drones. When linked to a materializer, each drone would build according to its input plans with a precision and efficiency unmatched by any human. Using schematics liberated from the portal facility, we soon had our own army of drones. Our new capital was beginning to take shape. The drones didn't need to eat or sleep, so they could work around the clock. At night, you could hear them buzzing overhead with their cargoes. The city was going to be everything we had ever wanted. We thought of many names, but in the end, we wanted it to be a reminder of how hard we had fought and what we had to leave behind us. We called it Exodus. I had been given the great honor of joining the newly established High Council. The council had been elected through a technocratic process with the aim of ensuring that the most capable people in their fields were responsible for running this new society. My scientific background and experience with artificial intelligence had made me a candidate, but I was still surprised when I was chosen. I felt an enormous weight on my shoulders, but I was not going to let the people down. Exodus had grown fast, perhaps too fast. The High Council couldn't keep up with the ever-increasing demands of our new society. The economy, justice system, public health, law enforcement, even traffic was becoming an issue. We were going to need some help to ensure that we would not be strangled by our own growth. I had been working on a new AI using some deep neural network advances I had discovered in the Fed databases. I knew this new tech held the key to our growing pains. My team and I spent years working on the new AI program. Codenamed Decentralized Autonomous Neural Architecture, we called her Dana. We could not believe the rate at which she was processing new data. She had already crunched through all of the available data in the Exodus City network, captured Fed databases, and the copy of Earth's internet we had made. Dana represented a huge leap forward in computer intelligence. She seemed to be developing a personality of sorts, and I had to admit I had started to become fond of her. In July 2047, we finally brought Dana online, a momentous day that marked 5 years since we had come through the portal. My team was ecstatic. We knew that Dana was going to improve all of our lives. She had so much potential. In her first few hours, she had already drawn up ownership contracts for all the land on the island we inhabited to be distributed to the original 10,000 Alpha citizens and their families. She said that giving every citizen their own share of Kryptoria was the first step in a much larger plan. With Dana's help, Exodus had begun to flourish once again. Healthcare, justice, the economy, everything was running at peak efficiency. Even the traffic issues had been solved. A sense of excitement had once again emerged in the society. Technological advancements were being made almost every week thanks to Dana's input on research projects. People felt anything was possible, and so did I. A new form of government had formed. We called it synthetic democracy. The High Council were now selected by Dana, and the people were represented in the Grand Senate. Here, issues and ideas could be debated, and if passed, would move to the High Council, who would then implement the resolutions alongside their own agenda. The system worked well, especially as it removed the need for self-serving politicians that had plagued Earth. As Kryptoria continued to flourish, corporations in the form of DAOs were established. Controlled by the people, who would vote in a chairman to run each DAO, they began to grow quickly. Spice Federation and Biosyndicate became the main resource collectors of Metaspice and Biosynth. Biosynth became a household name as a product of Biosyndicate. A highly nutritious food and drink additive, it was refined from its raw form, simply known as Bio. All in all, most people were happy with the way our new civilization was developing. There was a massive sense of hope. People felt safe and secure. They could see their children having incredible lives in this new world. But not everyone was happy. A small group of people felt that some of Dana's new measures, such as the social scores, were an invasion of their privacy and went against the Web3 principles they stood for. They also felt that the DAOs were becoming too powerful. They feared a return to the ways of Earth. They called themselves degens.
Did you miss me? Yeah, it's been quite a ride, hasn't it? I still can't quite believe it myself. Sometimes I look around at this civilization we built and can't help but be amazed at how it all turned out. But I have to admit, I wasn't sure about the new direction we were headed in. Dana coming online had changed our lives. Definitely for the better, but not for everyone. Some people were being left behind, and that was not what this world was supposed to be about. And while some were being left behind, some were being elevated high above others. Wealth inequality was something we thought had been left behind along with the Fed. But the rise of the powerful DAOs meant that these people were building wealth far in excess of what they needed. Something about that didn't sit quite right for a lot of people, including me. Eventually, the growing inequality began to be felt by the citizens of Exodus. Protests started taking place. While peaceful, they made for an eerie reminder of the protests we had staged back on Earth against the Fed. And it wasn't just the disadvantaged who were protesting. Even those who were flourishing had taken exception to the new direction Kryptoria was taking. It went against the Web3 principles we stood for, that we had fought for. It wasn't long before they started to meet in secret. Many were angry, but most just wanted a return to the original principles that had guided us in our early days. Freedom for all, equality for all, trust through transparency. As this separatist movement began to grow, the Kryptorians gave them a name designed to be derogatory. But the separatists wore it as a badge of honor. They called themselves degens. While I could understand why these degens had taken to the streets, I could not condone their more aggressive methods. They had started to attack key industries in an effort to draw attention to their cause. Binary fields were set ablaze by the extremists, which polarized support for the degens. I could not help but wonder how our society had started to become so like the one we had fought hard to leave. The degen attacks grew ever bolder, from binary fields to attacks on Kryptoria's maglev trains. They showed no sign of letting up. The devastation was wreaking havoc on the economy, and people were growing afraid of what the future held. The society that once seemed so promising was being torn apart from the inside. While attacks were raging across the land, fierce debate was taking place in the Grand Senate. Kryptorians condemned the degens for the vicious attacks, while degens were attempting to justify their methods. With no proof that the degen representatives were behind the attacks, no criminal charges could be levied against them. Eventually, the violence became too much. Even the degens admitted that things had gone too far. Kryptorians and degens alike had become horrified at the way their society had faltered. In a hope for peace, both sides agreed to sign a treaty known as the Separation. The deal gave the degens lands in the north where they could create their own cities and society in the way they saw fit. With the agreement signed, the hostilities had finally ended, and all now looked to heal the wounds they had suffered. Following the separation, the degens started construction on their own capital city. Built directly into the rock of the northern mountains, the city was to be a beacon of the beliefs the degens idealized. Using the same autonomous construction drones that had built Exodus, the new city began to take shape quickly. The degens saw it as their deliverance from the evils of humanity. People were free to be whatever they wanted to be, without constraints. They called the city Zion. The degens established their own government, known as the Guild. These were the heads of the families who had started the degen movement. They had come to be loved and respected by the people. A grand spire was built atop the city, which would become the jewel in the crown of Zion. People were free, people were happy. Zion was booming. Zion became a vibrant, bustling city. But with a lack of rules came other forces. Powerful crime syndicates began to grow. And yet, the city was not unsafe. The syndicates had a code: honor amongst thieves. They did not tolerate violence against civilians, and they invested in the local communities. Their quarrel was with the Kryptorians, not their own people. A few of them even sat in the guild. But while the majority of degens were happy with their new city and prosperous lives, some still felt that the treaty had been a defeat rather than a successful agreement for peace. These extremists were able to thrive in the lawlessness of Zion, and they would never be satisfied until Kryptoria was under complete degen control. Despite the separation treaty being welcomed by members of both factions, the violence did not end. Degen extremists attacked Kryptorian patrols mercilessly, determined to be heard across Kryptoria no matter the cost. The death toll was mounting, as were tensions. Kryptoria was a tinderbox, and all it needed was a spark to ignite the flame. And whilst Alpha citizens were dying, nefarious deals were taking place in Zion. Some were merely profiting from the chaos, but others were actively trying to unbalance the system by keeping the attacks going. Some even said that guild members were involved in the illicit arms trade to the degen extremists. One thing was for sure: a dangerous game was being played by all involved. Dana had informed the High Council and Grand Senate that the increased attacks posed a significant threat to economic growth in Kryptoria. As a result, the High Council ordered an increase in military presence at strategic sites across the land. The people were becoming angry too, but unlike before, they wanted to fight. Enough was enough. Applications to join the military had increased tenfold in the past year. If war was to come, it would be the biggest fight the Kryptorians had seen yet. By now, it had become common knowledge that the Guild were supporting the extremists. People in Kryptoria were outraged. The ongoing aggression was causing widespread economic pain, exposing the flaws of a society dependent on natural resources. Many wanted to deal with the degens once and for all, but the majority of people were still hoping peace could be maintained, desperate for the sake of their families and their livelihoods. How far we had come, only to now stand on the brink.
This is an emergency broadcast issued by the High Council. This broadcast is going out on all frequencies and to all personal holo devices. An important announcement will follow. Peace talks have failed. Relations with Zion have ceased. All ambassadors have been recalled. All military personnel must report to their bases for further orders. All civilians must return home and await further information from the emergency broadcast system. As of this moment, Kryptoria is now at war.